Muslims are taught that Quran has been perfectly preserved, letter for letter since 7th century. But one of the earliest Quranic manuscripts tells us completely different story. The Son of Palimpsest, catalogued as DAM 27. It's a book written on animal skin, erased and written over twice. And its underwriting does not match with the current Quran Muslims are reading today. The Son of Palimpsest is 38 folios that they contain an early underwriting Loa text. So if you think about it, that animal skin is being ready for someone to write on it. They write on it, they erased or washed away, and then they write the new thing. So we are looking at the lower writing. We are looking at the writing which they washed it before they put the new writing, because that is the writing apparently from 7th century, and it contains 40% of the Quran. The order of the surahs are very, very different in Palimpsest. It resonates with so-called companions codex such as Ibn Masud, Ubay bin Ka'b, or Ali, and seen as non-canonical. Written by at least 2 scribes with 9 complete queries. Gathering of the folded parchment leaves were stitched together to form a book. That can indicate that that was not a classroom work or notes for students or handouts for students, but a deliberately produced book. So we are dealing with a real Quranic codex, not some scraps. So both layers are Quranic, lower erased undertext, and then the upper rewritten text. So both of those texts are Quranic, and the gap between them is 50 years. One of the unusual thing is this: both layers are orientated the same direction, which suggests that primary codex was reused, literally overwriting the same book structure. So if you think about it, implication of that is standardization was still happening so early that non-standard Quranic codex was erased and replaced by the standardized text. And you've got scholars who are talking about how not only surah orders are different, but also there is quite a lot of variations between Palimpsest and the current Quran Muslims are reading today. So Asma Hilali in her book gives us what is in the lower text and what is in upper text. Upper text is approximately 1015 verses, and the verses that in the lower text you can see which folio has which surah and which verse. And you can also see some of the folios are not being identified. The list Asma Hilali provides for us contains 312 verses for lower text. And Eleonora Sellard, she also provides a list, full list, and you can see there are some folios are empty with the question marks, but majority of those folios for DMA 27 is put together here. Her list is approximately 400, so I think we are dealing with approximately 700 verses here for the lower text. If you look at these verses in the lower text, one of the things you are going to notice is how order of the surahs are very different. So if you look at here, folio 20, it jumps from surah 15 to surah 25. And then folio 23 jumps from surah 9 to surah 19. Folio 34 jumps from surah 12 to 18. Those are just few examples, but yeah, you can see them. And also, I'm sure you already noticed those chapters are not complete. And as I said, it is not complete Quran, so it doesn't contain 114 surahs of the Quran. If you think much simpler is the Palimpsest undertext presents a different arrangements and wording in places than the Quran Muslims are using today. So this is the material evidence for how early Muslims had multiple texts. So when it comes to the dating of those manuscripts, one of the things we see is there are multiple labs who are doing carbon dating. So one of the lab carbon dated Sana Palimpsest as 543 to 643 with a 68% of probability. And then another lab dated as late 6th century and mid 7th century. So all these dates, the carbon dating dates the animal skin, not the writing. The undertext could have been written after the animal died, but not necessarily right away. That's important for us to remember. So takeaway from these numbers is the undertext belongs to 7th century and the overtext is belong to early 8th century by codicology, two Quranic layers within decades. And of course, since we are talking about Sana Palimpsest, there are some kind of helpful variations that we need to be aware of it. For example, current Quran contains Bismillah almost in each beginning of each surah, except Surah 9. When we look at the Sana Palimpsest, one of the things we see is that Sana Palimpsest contains Bismillah for Surah 9. So on folio 5a, at the end of Surah 8 is followed by divider. Then the Bismillah appears in the line 8 and the line 9 carries with the beginning of Surah 9. A later correction is written over it. Do not say Bismillah, showing that Bismillah was first copied into the lower text and then marked for removal in the process of beginning the manuscripts into the line with the standardized text. If you think about it, what is the implication of that? The palimpsest itself records an active correction process, showing the Quran's text was not yet fixed even in its earliest decades. Also, as I mentioned earlier, the lower text has full of variations. So Asma Hilali, again in her book, she gives us a list of some of the examples for the variations, okay? Here's the example of variation. In Surah 19 verse 23, it points out before that day versus before that. So here you can see on the screen, it is folio 23b. So that is different from the current Quran we are reading. And also, just like as I'm talking about Surah 19 verse 23, it might be also beneficial to point out gray boxes that you are seeing on the page. They cannot read that. So parchment is so much damaged, it is not readable. So they don't know what is in those gray boxes. And then you can see, like, in certain pages, you've got couple of lines, like whole verse is not there. Here is more examples, like folio 21b, God knows what is there. So what we see is when it comes to the variations, it's not only there are missings or they cannot read it, but words are different, nouns are different, articles are different. So when it comes to the variations, I think it will be safe to say the palimpsest is all messed up. Well, you might be thinking it doesn't matter because Uthman standardized this. Then we have to remember, standardization is not same as the miraculous preservation without variance. The palimpsest shows competing textual reality persisted after Uthman. And if you think about the bigger picture, Muslims often insist that the Quran is the word for word identical in everywhere. But the Sana Palimpsest, Dam 27, shows two Quranic texts on the same parchment, on different in content and in chapter order, written within a few decades of Muhammad's life. You've got chapters are missing, you've got verses are missing, and then you've got orders are not following one another. That's what I would call is simply mess. And this is powerful evidence that the Quran was not perfectly preserved, but went through human editing and the standardization process, just like every other ancient text. The bottom line is this, actually, and if you think about it, these things are meta, because the Quran's theological claim is not that this is just sent by Allah, but also that the exact text was guarded from change. Yet one of the earliest Quranic books we possess shows there were many multiple forms of this text than a push to overwrite the old with the new. That doesn't look like as miraculous preservation, but it simply looks like human standardization. That's what it is. Well, it is good to know that one of the earliest Quranic manuscripts simply debunks the current Quran and then shows us Quran went through human suffering and human hands, and it ended up not being preserved at all.